Cindy, my fiancée, and her triplet sisters had a twisted scheme to cheat on me. The idea of getting accidentally knocked up from unprotected CC with another guy gets me so hot and wet, Cindy confessed. I felt my world collapse, but I didn't crumble. I planted hidden recorders and exposed every deceit. You think you can play these mind games with me? I confronted them all. My calm dismantling of their plan left them in shock. This is my story of betrayal and vengeance. Enjoy watching it. Mom, stop! This doesn't mean I love Sam any less. Those were the words Cindy, Sam's fiancée, said as she walked through the front door while talking on the phone with her mom. Sam had been thinking about this moment for years, but only worried about it for the last 2 weeks. Mom, enough! I tell you everything because I'm always honest with you, but I'm not asking for your opinion or approval. Plus, I know you and Aunt Sally did the exact same thing to Dad and Uncle Rob. Interesting, thought Sam as Cindy kept talking, not aware he was there. Morals seemed to run in her family. He had never noticed this before, but looking back, it made sense. What? How do I know? Simple. When you and Aunt Sally start drinking, you start talking, and boy, do you ever talk about interesting stuff. The three of us have known for years. There was a pause, which meant her mom was talking again. Cindy's tone became calm and gentle. So, you understand exactly how I feel. It's the same with me. I just need to get this out of my system, and then I'll be ready for the wedding. After that, I'll be a good girl, she told her mom. Sam looked down at the college yearbook on his lap. The picture in the middle of the page showed Cindy playfully posing for the camera. It was one of his favorites because it showed her fun side. But it also reminded him of her acne. She had bad cystic acne in their last year of school, which was the first year they dated. The yearbook team retouched her photo, but they missed one spot under her left nostril. In the photo, it looked like a shadow, but he remembered it well. He had always told her she was beautiful and to leave the acne alone, but she didn't listen, and it left a small scar. The scar was tiny and hard to find, but it was there. Cindy never seemed to notice it, but Sam used it to tell her apart from her identical triplet sisters. Why did he even need to tell the difference among 3 gorgeous blonde triplets? Simple. Paranoia. Even if you're paranoid, it doesn't mean people aren't out to get you. Sam had more than enemies. He had 3 older brothers. They didn't beat him up, but played nasty pranks. Growing up, they tricked him whenever their parents weren't around. They loved him, but still teased him. He learned to be careful and to check everything twice. That's what he thought about when he first met Cindy during the first week of senior year. He had seen her around before, but they had different friends. They met in an English seminar with 8 other students and the professor. Naturally, they got to know each other. College had been eye-opening for Sam before he met Cindy. He never dated in high school because he took his studies seriously and didn't like the drama. College was different. There he met girls who were straightforward. If they wanted to see someone else, they just told him and broke up. It was simple and clear. He began to trust people again, at least a little. Things started slow with Cindy but quickly got serious. By Thanksgiving, they were close enough that she brought him home to meet her parents. That's when he also met her sisters. He hadn't seen them before because their dad made sure they all went to different colleges. He felt it was to spread the opportunities around. Based on what Sam knew now, he thought their dad might also have wanted to prevent them from playing games with boyfriends. Sam knew Cindy had sisters, but he didn't know they were the same age or identical. She was secretive when he asked and changed the subject. When he saw them together for the first time, he realized what he thought were lots of selfies on her apartment's wall could have been pictures of her sisters, but they could have been selfies too. It was hard to tell. When Sam met the other 2 girls, he didn't freak out like some other guys had. The reason was simple. In grade school, Sam's best friend had twin sisters. Back then, he didn't think much about them because he was too young, but he did learn how to tell them apart. This made it easier when he met the triplets later. He never told anyone he had tricks to tell them apart. It seemed smarter to keep it a secret. With his brothers, he found it was better if people thought he was less smart than he was. The big surprise for Sam was meeting the girls' Aunt Sally. She and their mom were also identical twins. What were the odds? Identical twin sisters, one having identical triplet daughters. It seemed like it should be on the news. Aunt Sally's kids didn't look alike at all, which seemed strange to Sam at the time. Now it felt even stranger. As Sam got to know the triplets, he could tell them apart more easily. Abigail, the oldest, was less active, making her face a bit rounder. During their periods, this difference wasn't noticeable. Bonnie, the middle one, had a tiny freckle under her right eye. Cindy, the youngest, had an acne scar. Cindy also had a runner's body, smaller boobs, and strong calves. She had a mole on her lower back and a freckle near her belly button. Sam didn't get to see Abby's or Bonnie's bodies up close like Cindy's. He had seen them in bikinis at the pool, but he couldn't stare too long without getting in trouble. The triplets acted like no one could tell them apart. Maybe they thought everyone else was fooled. Many guys might have been, especially since the girls were pretty blondes. One time, Abby pretended to be Cindy on a date with Sam. She asked why he was looking at her face closely. He didn't say he noticed the acne scar was missing. He also didn't mention the puffiness around her eyes. Instead, he flattered her, saying she was so beautiful he couldn't help but look. She blushed, which Cindy never did. Another time, Bonnie took her turn pretending to be Cindy at lunch. She asked why he was looking at her hands. He didn't point out her freckle or say he was comparing the lines on her hands to Cindy's. Instead, he made up a sweet story about being so in love he couldn't look her in the eye without tearing up. Bonnie cried, which was something Abby and Cindy didn't do often, and tried to kiss him, but he only hugged her and said everything would be okay. In both cases, he didn't try to kiss or do anything more with Abby or Bonnie. He claimed he needed time alone with his feelings. They liked that excuse. They must have told Cindy good things because when he saw the real Cindy later, she showed him extra affection. These were the only times she ever took the lead. Sam wasn't sure what the triplets were up to. Were they testing him? Having fun? If Cindy had asked if he wanted to be with her sisters too, he might have considered it. But she never did. He didn't make a big deal out of the pretending. He didn't understand their game, but it seemed harmless at the time. Thinking about it as he frowned, he remembered a prank his brothers had played on him twice. They gave him a cupcake filled with hot sauce. They promised the second one was real, but it wasn't. They got in trouble for it, but Sam was the one suffering. He learned from it, though. He always thought twice after that. He might have missed chances like being with the triplets, but at least he avoided trouble. Cindy's voice brought him back to the present as she talked to her mom on the phone. "Yes, Mom, I understand," she said. Sam knew there was a lot to do in just 2 weeks. "Yes, I know there is a lot to do, and we only have 2 weeks. We've got it covered. All next week is getting everything out of the house and into storage, so we'll be ready to move into the new house after the honeymoon. The following week is getting everything ready for the wedding." He felt like saying they should cancel the wedding, maybe even for good, but Sam thought it was better to let things play out so he didn't look like the bad guy. "Mom, don't worry about it. The girls have both agreed. It will be fine. You'll see. Trust me. Okay, love you too. Love to Dad. Bye." He heard her hang up the phone and walk away to the shower. Sam waited until he heard the water run and the shower door close. Then he slowly stood up, legs feeling stiff. He had been stuck sitting behind a wall of boxes, unseen when she came home early. These boxes, full of his books, made a kind of fort, like when he was a kid. It gave him some peace, though now it felt different. Sam looked around. His things were mostly packed, except for some clothes and his desk stuff. He didn't care much for furniture, but he loved his desk. Cindy hated his recliner and said it had to go to the basement. She didn't like his old TV table from IKEA either. Sam thought he could just keep the basics, but it didn't fit into Cindy's plans for the new house. Cindy, on the other hand, had packed next to nothing. She said Sam just needed to show up at the church and say, "I do." She believed the bride did all the work. Sam began doubting he could even do his simple tasks. Cindy planned to get organized next week. Meanwhile, the movers would pack their things and take them to storage until they moved into the new house after the honeymoon. Sam would stay with Abby's boyfriend, Tony, while Cindy moved back in with her parents. But there was a saying by boxer Mike Tyson, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." Sam checked his watch. He had some time before Abby and Bonnie came over. They would bring takeout food to discuss the wedding. After that, Bonnie, who was really Cindy, would leave to spend the weekend with Bonnie's boyfriend, Bob. Meanwhile, Abby and Bonnie Cindy would have a sisterly sleepover at Sam's place. Sam would spend his weekend thinking he was with Cindy, but Cindy would actually be with Abby's boyfriend. The triplets fooled everyone because they looked exactly the same. But they weren't as smart as they thought. 2 weeks ago, Sam met up with Bob and Tony for drinks while the girls did wedding stuff. The guys were supposed to plan Sam's bachelor party, which took private club, get very drunk, and stay out of jail. With that settled, they talked about other things. The talk shifted to how great it would be if the sisters agreed to swap so they could be with each of the triplets. During the conversation, Sam saw that Bob and Tony couldn't tell the girls apart. Bob said Bonnie had a special way she pursed her lips when stressed. Tony said Abby stuck her tongue out a bit when thinking. Both were wrong. Sam knew all three sisters did those things, just at different times. Sam didn't let on that he knew better. Instead, he told Bob and Tony that all three sisters looked the same to him. Bob and Tony then talked about the upcoming sleepover weekend at Sam's place. Each believed he would have one night with his own girlfriend and didn't mind sharing with Sam on the off nights. That was when Sam's stomach dropped. When Cindy talked about her plans, she made it very clear to Sam that only one sister would be at their house, Abby. Bonnie was supposed to spend the weekend with Bob because his parents were visiting. Sam then asked about Bob's parents' visit and learned they had to reschedule because of a home repair problem. So Bonnie couldn't be with Bob's parents. The only way Sam could make sense of this was if the girl who was missing was going between houses for 2 nights. The only reason one would do that before Cindy's wedding, with 2 sisters at Sam's house, would be if the one moving was Cindy. So, the old sister switch Sam had been thinking about for over 2 years might finally happen. But the way it was set up, only Cindy, Bob, and Tony would be having fun. Sam, Abby, and Bonnie would stay home working on seating plans for the wedding, and sex with Cindy was off limits since a sister was at the house. Not much of a swap, Sam thought. After thinking about what to do for days, Sam decided he needed more information. Without it, he was just guessing. After some online shopping with packages sent to his office, he acted. He placed several voice recorders around the house hidden among the moving stuff, one in each bedroom, one in the living room, one in the dining room, and one in the kitchen. He skipped the basement where his office was. The girls never went there. The recorders were great because they had Wi-Fi. He could either live stream to his computer or phone or download any time. Sam knew he was in questionable legal territory because their state required one person's consent to record. He was eavesdropping, but this was just for information, not for court. He wasn't looking to divorce Cindy yet, so he got a prepaid phone to run the recorders. As he finished placing the recorders, he suddenly felt anxious. Cindy had stopped using birth control weeks ago. She said she wanted it out of her system before the wedding to start their family right away. But Sam calculated that Cindy would start her period on the wedding night, lasting through the honeymoon. When he questioned her, Cindy cried and said she couldn't control her body's timing. She promised more sex before the wedding, and he calmed down. Now he was upset again. He realized Cindy's fertile time was when she was supposed to be pretending to be Abby and Bonnie with their boyfriends. He knew neither Bob nor Tony used protection. A couple of days after planting the bugs, Sam got his answer. All 3 girls were over one evening while he worked late. They were drinking wine and chatting. Cindy was thanking Abby and Bonnie for their wedding present. They were happy to help Cindy explore her curiosity, but wanted to know why they also couldn't swap to keep things even. Cindy said they were free to swap Bob and Tony, but doing so with Sam would be cheating, which she would never allow. What she was doing wasn't cheating, it was just having some fun before settling down, so it was okay. She said she would never feel anything but love for Sam, so it was fine. Then, one of the sisters asked a question Sam had been wondering about. "If you love Sam so much, why are you going with our boyfriends without birth control?" Cindy's voice got serious. "The idea of getting pregnant by accident from being with another guy makes me so excited. I've had to relieve myself for 2 months every day since I thought of it, even after being with Sam. It'll be easy. Friday night and Saturday until noon, Bob will be with me, and then all Saturday afternoon until Sunday morning, it will be Tony. When I get back Sunday morning, we send Sam out for breakfast. You get up and dressed, I clean up, and then Sam will spend all day with me. He won't have had any for 2 days, so he'll be ready when I tell him I'm ready." Bonnie then said, "Fine, but Bob can never know, and I'm sure Abby doesn't want Tony to know, especially not if you get pregnant. I never agreed to this if that happens. Don't ever try to get Bob to pay for a child that's your problem." Abby quietly added, "Tony can never know. If he even thinks I was with someone else, he could get really mad. Remember that guy he caught with his girlfriend in high school? He nearly hurt both of them badly." "Don't worry," Cindy said. "No one will ever know, and if I get pregnant, Sam will think it's his. He trusts me too much to suspect anything." Thinking about him raising a kid that isn't his without knowing makes me even more frustrated. "You two have to leave now. I need some time alone." They left, and she did exactly that. It was all on the audio recording. This was the closest he'd get to understanding why Cindy was doing all this. Meanwhile, as Cindy took a shower and before Abby and Bonnie turned up, Sam slipped out of the house. He had his car parked down the street and around the corner just in case. Now that he knew Cindy's plan was in motion, he needed to set his own plans into action. They were simple ideas that could withstand any surprises. First thing was to call off the wedding. Trust meant everything to Sam. They hadn't taken vows yet, but after being together for nearly 3 years and engaged for 8 months, if they couldn't stay faithful now, what hope was there for the future? The deceit and lack of respect hurt the most. Plus, Cindy seemed to be playing games with their future just 2 weeks before the wedding. He couldn't trust her or her family anymore. Sam's family, however, supported him, even his once tough brothers who had become softer over time. He called them all to explain the situation and asked them to try to get back any money they'd spent. Luckily, they only needed to cancel some tuxedo rentals and hotel reservations. Most of the invited guests were from Cindy's side, and her father was paying for the wedding. His older brothers even offered to confront Bob and Tony, but Sam declined. He knew neither Bob nor Tony had any idea about Cindy and the girls' scheme. Another brother jokingly suggested adding something to the wedding food, but Sam said no. He told them he would handle it. Next, Sam needed to secure his belongings. He planned to move his stuff out of the house as soon as possible. He didn't have much, but he needed his things to start over. He rented a storage unit and called a cheap moving company recommended by a friend. It was just a couple of guys with a truck. They would work fine for what he needed. He set a time for Saturday morning to move his things while Cindy was out of the house. The third thing was to take some money from their shared account. They had $5,000 in there, and he transferred $4,000 to his own account, thinking of it as separation pay, $1,000 for each year together and $1,000 for the trouble. Cindy wouldn't notice the missing money soon since she had her own account for personal spending. The joint account was just for rent and bills, and the lease was ending in a week. After transferring the money, he turned off his phone to think clearly. Lastly, he thought about revenge. Cindy was planning to cheat, so she deserved some consequences. As he drove around, avoiding home, he thought of a plan. Looking at his watch, he realized he had been out for nearly 3 hours. It was already 8 p.m. He turned his phone back on and saw multiple texts and voicemails from Cindy, asking when he would be home to order food and meet her sisters before Bonnie had to go back to Bob's place. Ignoring the messages, Sam drove to Bob's house. Not far from Bob's place, he saw Tony's car parked. Bonnie must have driven it there. Abby's car was in the shop, so Cindy had taken Tony's car to avoid questions. Sam parked quietly a few spaces up the street, took photos of Tony's car for proof, and then headed home. He drove by his house and saw Cindy's and Bonnie's cars outside. He parked his car in front of the neighbor's house where it couldn't be seen from his. He took a picture of Bonnie's car next to Cindy's for more evidence. He then got in his car and reviewed the recordings from the past 3 hours. Unsure how they would play the scene, he listened carefully. Cindy would probably scold him for being late and unresponsive. He didn't feel like dealing with that. He couldn't tell who was pretending to be Cindy from the recordings. Entering the house, he heard whispers that abruptly stopped. "Hi, honey. You just missed Bonnie." "She had to leave," a girl said, giving him a quick and simple kiss. She had a small freckle under her right eye and looked nervous. Real Bonnie was pretending to be Cindy tonight. Sam kept his face calm. Abby also looked uneasy. He decided to increase the pressure, thinking it might force them to make a mistake. He looked closely at both of them, staring hard and shifting his eyes back and forth with no expression on his face. "What's wrong, girls?" Bonnie Cindy laughed nervously. "Nothing's wrong, honey. We were just worried because you didn't answer your phone. Where did you go?" "Out," he said, grabbing a container of Chinese food from the counter. He was hungry and started to eat quickly as the girls watched him and then looked at each other. "Do you want me to warm that up for you, honey?" Bonnie Cindy asked. No, she called him honey. That's what she must call Bob, although he had never noticed before. Cindy always called him baby. They must not have practiced this well. This was good to know. There was silence in the kitchen. The girls just watched him. He looked at both of them, still with no emotion. "Don't you two have wedding stuff to do?" he asked sharply. They both flinched. They weren't expecting him to be in a bad mood. He was usually cheerful around them, but the anger was part of his plan. Both girls quickly got up and went into the master bedroom, closing the door behind them. They left in such a rush that they forgot Cindy's phone, which was on the kitchen counter behind Sam. He picked it up, turned the ringer to vibrate, and put it in his pocket. He had heard on some recordings that Cindy would take Abby's and Bonnie's phones, hiding the one she didn't need in her purse. This meant Cindy's phone would be left in the house. Controlling the phone meant no messages would reach Cindy. They had no landline phone. If Cindy's phone wasn't left in the kitchen, Sam would have had to find and hide it. This lucky break made things easier and let him increase his plan's intensity. After he finished eating, Sam grabbed a beer and went down to his basement office, making sure to leave a mess in the kitchen. This was unusual because he was known as the neatest of all the boyfriends. He slammed the door at the bottom of the stairs and was happy to hear the bedroom door open above and footsteps going into the kitchen. He pulled up the live stream of the conversation there. Even without the recording, he could hear someone washing the dishes. Something's wrong. Have you ever seen him this grumpy? No. They must have had a fight. Why didn't she warn us? She's only thinking about herself, as usual. We need to call her. I know she said not to, but this could get really bad. Where's the phone? I don't know. Didn't you have it last? I don't remember. No, wait. I think Cindy had it. Where'd she put it? Do you think she put it in her purse with the others? She must have. What do we do? No matter what, we have to keep him happy tonight until we can talk to her tomorrow. Easy for you to say. I'm Cindy tonight. There was a laugh. I thought you wanted to switch. I changed my mind. I don't want any guy but Bobby. I'd die if he ever cheated on me. I don't see how what Cindy's doing is any different. We've both switched with Cindy on Sam before, and you were fine with it then. That was different. We were just testing him, and nothing happened. He was a perfect gentleman. So just keep him happy tonight then if you need to. Tell him you have a problem but still want to make him feel good. He'll go for it. Guys are selfish. Should I check on him downstairs? I'd give him space. More laughter. Then the footsteps moved back to the master bedroom and the bedroom door closed again. He listened to the live stream audio of what Abby and Bonnie were talking about in the bedroom. I can't do it. Bonnie sounded like she was going to break down. Well, you have to, if things get out of control. I'm not doing anything with him. Tony would kill me if he found out. You have to take one for the team. I've never lied to Bobby before. Too late, sweetie. You lied to Bobby when you agreed to do this, and you've been lying to Sam from the moment he walked through the door. The rest of the conversation was sobbing and comforting, and as time went by, the sobbing sounded more pathetic, which would make his plan easier. He turned off the audio and spent the next few hours cleaning his work area and taking apart his desk so the movers could take it away. It was now 11 p.m. He went up to the master bedroom and entered without knocking. The girls were sitting on the bed talking quietly. At this point, Sam didn't care what they were talking about. His entrance shocked them. He looked at both of them with dead eyes. Cindy's eyes were puffy from crying. Abby looked nervous. I'm going to take a shower and then I'm getting into bed, he announced. Fine, Abby said. We'll go to the living room so our talking won't keep you up. If that's what you want, you should just save everyone a lot of trouble by going back to your parents' place. That way no one has to waste time planning a wedding at all. We can just cancel the whole thing, Sam said. What? Abby asked in shock. Bonnie, also called Cindy, looked like she couldn't say anything. Unless my fiancé is in my bed in 5 minutes, "There is no point in any of you being here when I finish my shower," Sam said. "I'm not going to get any of the loving during our honeymoon in a couple of weeks, because she scheduled her period then." "You jerk!" Abby shouted at him. "You can't talk to her like that!" Sam ignored her and walked toward Bonnie Cindy, who was now crying hard. "You need to choose, Cindy. Me or your family. If it's me, be in the bed when I get out of the shower. If it's your family, you can both leave. I'll get my stuff out of the house by tomorrow morning while you're gone," he said, and went into the master bathroom without another word. While Sam brushed his teeth, he heard whispering on the other side of the door. Good. Neither one had stormed out the front door yet. He stripped and got into the shower. As the hot water hit him, he heard the squeaky bathroom door open slowly. This was getting interesting. He thought the argument would continue in the bedroom with more yelling about how insensitive he was. He didn't really expect anything more than to ruin Cindy's weekend before breaking things off with her. Both sisters would storm out, and Cindy would go back to Bob to fix her marriage. Sam planned to find some evidence in her bag that would finalize things. But now, another scenario was playing out. As he washed himself, he heard the shower door open behind him. He turned and saw a beautiful, nervous, blonde woman entering the shower. To his surprise, it wasn't Bonnie. It was Abby, who must have remained collapsed and tagged out. Abby came closer, and Sam just grabbed her and gave her a deep kiss. She was surprised at first, but then she relaxed and melted into his body. When she started kissing him back, he turned her around and pressed her against the shower wall. Her hands went up to stop herself from hitting the wall. Before she could say anything, he noticed a small mole on her shoulder blade that Cindy didn't have. He leaned into her and whispered in her ear, "You think you can play mind games with me? You get me all worked up and then want me to just wait while you talk to your sisters? You think that doesn't upset me?" She whimpered but said nothing. "Answer me," he hissed. "A man," she said quickly. "You're mine. Do you understand?" She nodded and moaned. "I can't hear nodding. Say it." "Yes," she said. "I'm yours." "You're never going to be with anyone else ever, will you?" "No. I'm going to be with you whenever I want, got it?" "Yes," she whispered again. Interesting. He didn't know Abby liked this kind of control. "If I want to be with you in front of your sisters, you'll let me, won't you?" "Oh, God, yes. In fact, you'll let me start a family in front of your sisters, won't you?" "Yes," she whispered again. "Good. Now tell me I'm your man." "You are," she moaned. He then dried himself and Abby, and they both went to the bed. She led him to the bed, got in on her back, and spread her legs without a word. Sam turned out the light. "I've got your body memorized. Tonight, while I'm with you, think about me being with your sisters, too." "Oh, God," she said again. He then kissed her and moved down her body until he found her most sensitive spot. He paused and left small marks on her thigh and belly. Then he quickly went back to touching her so she wouldn't notice the marks. He gently pushed one finger inside her while kissing her. Then he added another finger, and then a third one. With his other hand, he touched her chest. She didn't stop feeling pleasure until it was almost too much. She pushed his head away and he moved up her body, kissing her softly. She didn't resist and kissed him back. While she focused on the kiss, he gently entered her. She wrapped her legs around him, looked him in the eyes, and said, "Make love to me. Finish inside me." And he did. As he did, he paused every now and then to softly bite her neck. When she felt intense pleasure, she cried into his shoulder to muffle the sound. Afterward, he rolled off her, and she lay next to him quietly, cuddling for at least 15 minutes. Normally, Cindy would talk a lot after such moments, chatting about everything and sometimes spoiling the mood. But this time, Cindy was quiet. Abby lifted herself up and looked at him, caressing his face. "I don't tell you enough how special you are to me," she said warmly. There it was again. Special. He just pulled her close for a kiss. "Being with you makes me realize how lucky I am," he said after a pause, choosing his words. They kissed again. When they stopped, she asked, "Do you want a drink?" "My usual," he replied, doubting she knew what that was. He sensed her hesitation. "A double shot of that whiskey. Neat. Remember?" "Oh, right," she said. He really wanted the drink but didn't remember Abby being much into alcohol. Was she planning something? He would be careful. She got up and left the room, closing the door behind her. He could hear her footsteps, the sound of a door opening, whispers, and then 2 sets of footsteps going to the liquor cabinet in the living room. They seemed unsure where everything was and how to pronounce La Frogue. He realized how noisy the house was. They should have tried for a rent reduction when they moved in. Too late now. More whispers outside the door, then silence. The door opened slowly, and a blonde girl entered the room holding 2 glasses. She closed the door with her backside and walked to the bed. As she got closer, he stood up quickly, took the drinks from her hands, put them down, and pulled her into a deep kiss. He tasted vodka on her lips and felt that she was trembling. This skin felt different from the girl who just left. They must have switched. Abby probably told Bonnie he'd be calm now. Their mistake excited him, and he started getting aroused again. She tensed up, broke the kiss, and pushed him away. "Don't you want your drink, honey?" Honey. They had switched. She tried to sound relaxed, but seemed stressed. "I changed my mind about what I want to drink," Sam said. He spun her around, pushed her onto the bed, and started kissing her deeply. She was dry at first, confirming the switch, but soon her legs relaxed and she became wet. He brought her to several peaks before she realized it. While doing so, he left small marks on her thigh and belly. After finishing, he moved up, kissed her mouth, and she eagerly kissed back. He stopped occasionally to softly bite her neck. Unlike her sister, she didn't ask him to finish inside her, but he did anyway. She hugged him tightly, and they both fell asleep. The next morning, Sam woke up to find Bonnie's hand on him. She was still asleep. He began to touch her gently. With morning light coming through the curtains, he saw a freckle under her right eye. As she became more aware, he pulled away from her hand, climbed over her, and began to enter her. She woke up in surprise, starting to speak, but he kissed her deeply. As he kissed, he brought her to another peak. She seemed upset but tried to hide it. Sam acted like he didn't notice. Without pulling out, he turned her onto her knees and entered her from behind. He saw she had no mole on her shoulder blade but one near her waist. He grabbed her hair, pulled gently, and used his other hand to touch her intimately. She spent the next several minutes crying into the pillow before he finished. "Is the heat on?" she suddenly asked. "I don't know. Are you cold?" Bonnie nodded and quickly left the room naked, carefully closing the door behind her. He heard the guest room door open, more whispers, and then footsteps coming back to the main bedroom. The beautiful, nude blonde now entering the room did not have a freckle under her right eye, so it was Abby, starting her morning shift. Sam noticed the marks on her neck were becoming more visible. Luckily, neither girl had realized it yet. "It's cold," he mentioned as she got into bed. Unlike Bonnie, Abby was beaming. "You can warm me up." And he did, both in bed and later in the shower. Afterwards, they gave up on any more intimacy, got dressed, and headed to the kitchen. Bonnie, pretending to be Abby, was sipping coffee with a gloomy look. Abby, pretending to be Cindy, happily chatted away while cooking eggs. A knock on the door broke the peace. Sam answered. It was the movers. He showed them the boxes to take and what items to grab from the basement. The girls exchanged worried looks. "Honey, what's going on?" Abby Cindy asked. "You're under a lot of stress with the move and the wedding. I just want to make things easier. I'm having the guys move my stuff first. You said it was in the way. I want to help." Abby thought for a moment and then kissed him. "Thank you, honey. You're so thoughtful." Bonnie still looked doubtful but stayed silent. After breakfast, Abby Cindy shooed Sam out of the kitchen to clean up. Then she and Bonnie went into the guest bedroom. Sam went outside and called Tony. "What's up, bro?" Tony answered, sounding sleepy. "Bad news, man," Sam said. "What?" Tony was instantly wide awake. "I think Abby might be cheating on you." "What? No way! I'm not sure. I've heard things from the girls that didn't make sense before, but last night I saw your car at Bob's place, and Bonnie's car is here at my place." "Damn, are you sure?" "I took photos. I didn't want to believe it myself, and I didn't want to say anything until I was certain. I have had the same 2 girls here since last night. Nobody has left. Maybe it's really Bonnie at Bob's using your car for some reason and she'll come here later. But I doubt it. The 2 girls here aren't acting like anyone else is coming. I'll send you the photos. Look at the metadata to see when and where I took them. I don't want to get between anything, but I'd want to know if it were me. God damn it! I'm really sorry. That liar. Look, you should be able to tell them apart, right? If it really is Abby at Bob's place, take a good look at her when she shows up. Check her bag for dirty clothes. That could tell you a lot. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. The determination in Tony's voice was clear even from miles away. They hung up. Sam sat on the porch to read. From what he could hear, Abby, Cindy, and Bonnie were really working on wedding plans. They seemed to be handling the liquor order. Sam wondered how much of the wedding costs were non-refundable. Close to noon, Sam received a call from an unknown number. The woman on the other end was crying and sounded half awake. Sam, this is Bonnie. Can I please talk to one of my sisters? Sure, he said before going inside to find them. He handed the phone to Abby and returned to the porch. Abby was still pretending to be Cindy. A moment later, real Bonnie, now pretending to be Abby, came onto the porch with Abby. We need to go to the hospital. Bonnie had an accident, said Abby, Cindy, giving him back his phone. My God, is it serious? Asked Sam, trying to look concerned. She's a little hurt, but she'll be okay, Abby, Cindy said. We'll be back soon. Let me drive you, Sam offered. No, no, they both shouted, then looked embarrassed. It's all right, said Abby. Cindy, calming down. You know how clumsy Bonnie is, she said as real Bonnie glared at her. We know you're busy. Stay here. It'll be fine. Sam thought about arguing, but decided against it. He let them leave with minimal protest. As soon as they drove away, Sam called Bob. Bob, what's going on? Cindy just said Bonnie had an accident but wouldn't give details. What? She just left my place about half an hour ago. She said she was going to your place. No one has come here all morning. What? Look, I don't know what's happening, but last night I saw Tony's car in front of your place. Abby's using it because hers is in the shop. That's crazy. Maybe she lent it to Bonnie. I don't think so. Bonnie's car was here and Tony's car was there. I think the girls might be swapping places. I called Tony this morning and told him the same. If Tony hurt Bonnie, I'll be furious. How do you know it was Bonnie at your place? I have no clue who was here. There was a pause. Damn, Bob finally said. I know. I'm heading to the hospital to figure out what's going on. If they're swapping and Cindy's involved, I'll be really upset. I hear you, Bob said. Sam couldn't help but twist the knife a bit. I mean, it's one thing if we had all agreed to this, but the lying really bothers me. It seems like there's been some cheating going on here. Last night I thought I was with Cindy, but now I'm not so sure. She got up in the middle of the night and came back with a drink. Maybe they switched on me. If I did end up with Bonnie, I didn't realize it. I'm sorry if that's the case. As Bob responded, Sam could hear the coldness in his voice. I'll see you at the hospital. Sam smiled and finished his coffee, giving the patient time to check in. After that, he put his mug in the sink. He went through some file folders he had left unpacked, pulling out documents. He also collected some listening devices from around the house and put them in his car. They weren't needed anymore. Quickly, he packed his remaining clothes and loaded them into the car. When he got to the emergency room, he saw 2 male police officers outside. One was talking with a big smile on his face. Sam stayed where they couldn't see him and listened. So I show up and there's this naked blonde girl lying on the sidewalk. Her legs are spread out and she's completely out cold. As soon as the EMTs arrive, I have to act all professional and start talking to witnesses. They said her boyfriend thought she was cheating. He found hickeys on her, hit her, and she ran out without any clothes. Ended up getting hit by a car while crossing the street and hit her head on the ground. Did you get the boyfriend? The other cop asked. No, he took off. Anyway, she was gorgeous until she woke up and started to puke everywhere like in The Exorcist. Sam stopped listening and entered the hospital. After a brief and unfriendly greeting at reception, he was directed to admissions. My fiancée was just brought in. I want to give you her insurance info. I have her healthcare paperwork and privacy forms. Those were the right words for the admissions clerk, who quickly confirmed that Cindy Springer had been admitted with a fractured skull and a concussion, but otherwise only had bruises and scrapes. She was lucky considering a car hit her, but they were doing many tests to be sure. They would likely keep her overnight for observation, but she might be released the next day. The clerk gave Sam the number of the emergency room bay where Cindy was and a visitor badge. Sam walked to the bays like a robot, feeling numb. He reached Cindy's bed and saw her parents and sisters around her, all very worried. When they saw Sam, their worry turned into panic. "My only question, Cindy," Sam said before anyone could react, "is whether Tony was with you too before he hit you." She started crying. Everyone else looked horrified. "And just so you know, the wedding is off." Cindy's crying turned into a loud wail. Her father got up and walked over. "Sam, let's talk for a minute." Sam looked at him without any emotion. He had liked the guy up until now, but didn't want any more nonsense. Sam couldn't tell what Cindy's father was thinking, but he knew he didn't want to hear anything from him. "Did you know your wife and her sister swapped partners with you and your brother-in-law?" The man looked shocked. Sam didn't know if it was because it was true or because he was hearing it for the first time. "I heard your daughter talking about it on the phone with your wife." Cindy's father didn't say a word. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Maybe you didn't know. But you might want to consider DNA testing your daughters," Sam said, making air quotes. Just then, Cindy's mother stood up and fainted, hitting her head on the floor. It didn't sound good, but at least she was in the right place if it was a concussion. As Bonnie went to help her mother, Abby spat at Sam. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Sam just smiled. "For your information, Abby, you and Bonnie were both much better than your sister. See you around?" Sam was heading out the door as Bob was coming in, looking grim. "You might want to check your girlfriend for hickeys and ask her where she got them," Sam said as he left. Indistinct yelling echoed behind him from the ER as he made his way to the lobby. As he reached the front door, he heard the public address system announce, "Security to ER, stat! Security to ER, stat!" 3 months later, Sam sat up in bed, sipping scotch. Next to him was a beautiful blonde woman. Her thighs and chest had hickeys. She had a small mole on her right shoulder blade. Her backside had red marks shaped like hands from a spanking, as she had lied to him. She wore a dog collar, but since she had behaved well, he didn't tie her to the wall. When he left the hospital, he thought he'd never see any of them again, especially not Abby. But Abby followed him home from work one day. When he asked why, she said she had promised him at the house that she belonged to him and only him. Plus, Tony had kicked her out. Tony never hit her, even though he wanted to. But to avoid being charged for hitting Cindy, he let Abby go. Bobby never hit Bonnie either, but he yelled at her so loudly and called her terrible names. She had to be given medicine to calm down, and security made him leave. That ended their relationship, too. Cindy was now at home with her mother and Bonnie. She was still not feeling well from a concussion and was often sick. She was also pregnant, possibly from Bobby. There was plenty of space in the house. Cindy's dad had moved out. He thought about what Sam had said and got DNA tests done on his daughters. As expected, they weren't his daughters. They were actually his nieces because his wife's sister's husband got her pregnant. There's probably a word for that situation. Aunt Sally was also living with the girls. Uncle Rob didn't know that his wife and sister-in-law had swapped partners. He had 3 daughters he didn't know weren't his. After testing, only one was found to be his. The other 2 had different fathers, not the triplets' father. The whole story hit the news when Uncle Rob burned his house and got arrested. When Abby found out that her dad was really her uncle, she called her mom, aunt, and Cindy names, blaming them for messing up everyone's lives. She couldn't stay with them, so she went to Sam, who she both loved and hated. At first, Sam didn't want her near him. He thought she was nuts, and didn't want her around his food or drinks or near him when he was asleep. But he hadn't had any action in a while and was bored of being alone, so they made a deal. He let her stay for a few days, but said she had to be tied up and blindfolded. Though he wasn't really into that stuff, Abby was, and she didn't mind. She agreed and seemed even happier, the rougher things got. It was strange, but Sam went along with it because it worked for both. It was a win-win. Sam knew he'd never marry Abby, but he thought it was an okay way to pass the time while he got over his last relationship. Maybe he'd learn to trust someone again one day, but only to a certain point. He did, however, make Abby get a tattoo just below her collarbone. It was a scarlet A. Abby thought it stood for her name, Abby. She really wasn't the brightest. Before moving on to the second story, please let me know your opinion. Do you like the story long or short, a series, or separate parts? The comment section is always welcome, and don't forget to let me know which of these two stories you like better. Story 2. Grenville McCree was a big baby. He was the seventh son born to Margaret McCree, and it was too much for her. She lived a hard life, and giving birth to a 13-pound baby was the final straw. After having him, she closed her eyes and passed away on the kitchen floor of their small two-room shack. Kyle McCree, the oldest son at 17, knew what to do. He had seen death before from working in the mines. He took charge and sent the second youngest to call the police. They needed to register their mother's death and transfer the ownership of the shack to him so the family could survive. The problem was there were too many people living in the small shack. Margaret had been too kind to give any child away. The rules said only 6 people could live in a two-room shack. With the baby sent to an orphanage and their mom gone, they could keep the house and get some bonus money for giving the state another worker. The police came and asked questions while writing things down. Kyle gave the newborn a name as per their tradition, which was made official on the papers. The truck took their mom's body away without much ceremony. Kyle told the police where to deposit the bonus money, and they left with the baby. It was the last time Grenville saw his brothers. At the state orphanage, they tested the baby to see if he had any special traits as he grew up. The results would show the costs of medical care the state might face. Medicine could fix almost anything now, but it was usually for the rich. If medicine was needed for workers like Grenville, who might become a soldier, the cost was added to their long contract. If they couldn't pay, their treatment was denied, and they were sent to risky jobs with a short life expectancy. Just after the DNA test started, a red icon popped up on the technician's screen, and he frowned. Grenville's DNA showed he was not fully human. Margaret, his mother, had not been careful about who she was with, according to the state. Now they had a child who was half human and half something else. With so many alien species visiting Earth, keeping track of the genetics was nearly impossible. The unknown parts of Grenville's DNA made most of the control methods they used for workers and soldiers ineffective. They had to use old-style brain implants to control him. This limited the jobs he could do. The technician marked him as a low-rank ground troop, destined for hard duty in the Planetary Assembly's army, called the Paw, which kept order in the galaxy. Grenville was no longer the state's problem. He was now part of Earth's contribution to the Assembly. Grenville was quickly moved into the Assembly's automated child care system with other children at his level. After his discipline chip was installed, he spent the next 15 years in a system that fed, cleaned, dressed, and educated him using brain stimulation. Most children responded as expected, but not Grenville. He learned quickly, but his mixed DNA made his responses hard to read, so the system marked him as slow. In their early years, a caregiver held each child for an hour a day. Grenville loved this time the most. He looked up at his caregiver and smiled. Some caregivers weren't good, but his was kind. She knew he was different, but never had issues with him. He never cried or acted up and always listened when she talked. She started to think the machines were wrong about him, but was afraid to ask questions. When the children turned 8, the caregivers stopped coming. This made Grenville very sad, but he remembered being held, and this memory made him feel better. Smaller kids sometimes asked him for hugs because he was bigger, and Grenville didn't mind this. At 15, they left the child care system and moved into barracks to start soldier training. 6 months of basic training sorted out the weak from the strong, and a third of the kids were moved to do hard and dangerous jobs. Grenville never saw them again. Next was combat training. 6 more months of hard training followed. Grenville was not only bigger but also stronger than the others, even some trainers. However, he wasn't naturally aggressive. This meant he took more beatings than he dealt out. He could take a lot of punishment, and if he caught his attacker, he would just hold them. The trainers were angry he didn't knock his opponents out. Grenville tried to explain he didn't want to hurt his teammates, and they secretly appreciated his kindness. One night, the trainers talked about his failure and got permission to push him hard to see if they could spark his aggression. The next day, Grenville went into the training gym and found no one else there. A man in black with a mask entered. He said he was there to kill the students, starting with Grenville. The man attacked, grabbing him and kneeing him in the stomach, then throwing him to the floor. As Grenville rolled away, a stomp missed his neck. This was no practice drill. The man was really trying to kill him. Grenville got to his feet only to be kicked in the head. He fell again but kept trying to escape. The man hit him again and again. Seeing the man's fierce eyes, Grenville knew he had no choice. He took 2 hard punches to the face to get close and grab the man's shoulders. Pulling him forward, Grenville slammed his forehead into the man's nose. There was a loud cracking sound, and the man fell to the ground, out cold. His face was smashed. Grenville was dizzy from the headbutt and the punches he took, but he readied to finish the man off. Just then, a sharp pain hit his head, making him stumble. He ignored the pain and got back into position. The door flew open, and a teacher tackled Grenville to the floor. His heel barely missed the man. Grenville took 4 days to recover from the beating. He never found out what happened to the guy who attacked him. Sadly, one of his teachers didn't come back to class, and Grenville wondered if that guy got to the teacher first. The hardest part was how the other teachers acted towards him. Instead of thanking him for protecting the other kids, they all stopped talking to him. Some even looked at him with anger. From that point on, he wasn't asked to join any activities. They didn't seem to care if he needed to learn skills to survive, so he watched closely and practiced alone. A third of the kids were cut during training. A smaller group of 16-year-olds, including Grenville, moved to a different barracks. Here, they would spend 6 months training with weapons using a special brain stimulation device. This device programmed memories of using different weapons into their heads. However, the device didn't work well for Grenville, so he had to train in a different way. But even though he learned differently, he only had to be shown something once, and he remembered it. Soon, the young soldiers were in combat gear with survival packs at their feet as they strapped into seats inside a transport pod. 30 kids were sent through a gate system to wherever they were needed. Many wouldn't live through their first year. Grenville's team was luckier than most. They were sent to some of the worst places on the edge of the gate network, but Grenville always tried his best to keep his team alive. A nest of enemies on a hill? Grenville carried a heavy mortar to help a pinned-down team. He got shot in the shoulder and the leg, but the team took down the enemies. Ambushed and outnumbered? Grenville drove a truck through enemy lines with cannons firing. He got hit in the chest and thigh, but he wasn't hurt too badly and was back with his team in 2 weeks. When enemy beasts attacked his team, Grenville fought with his gun until it was empty. Then he used it as a club until it broke. Next, he used his knives and finally his bare hands to kill the last 2. He got deep cuts on his face and body, but he healed in 2 months and rejoined his team. Grenville always led the charge. His body covered in extra armor, his team scrounged up. He wasn't the fastest, but he drew enemy fire so his team could take out enemies safely. The original 30 kids in his team were down to just 10 after years of battles. Other soldiers wanted to join his team because its survival rate was twice that of any other. The assembly sent units on missions to keep order across many planets. There were always fights or uprisings popping up. The work was bloody and dangerous, and each mission could be their last. Those who wanted to survive joined Grenville's team. After 13 years as a soldier, Grenville's unit was sent to fight a smart enemy on its own planet. Their task was to take over a big weapons factory, which was also the enemy's think tank. They were told the enemy was developing a new threat. They needed to find out what it was, take it if they could, capture or kill the scientists, and destroy the building. After a tough fight, they got into the building. Grenville led half his team deeper inside. They reached the core, which looked like a research lab. The scientists had locked themselves in a computer room. Grenville's team set charges to blow up the building while he and a few others went for the computer lab. Suddenly, pain shot through his body, and Grenville saw his teammates screaming and writhing. Some had already died, their faces frozen in pain, eyes wide open. Through the haze of pain, he saw the scientists watching and gesturing excitedly. The enemy had hacked their control chips and was killing them. This was the secret weapon. Grenville grabbed 2 charges, peeled off their strips, and despite the agony, he staggered towards the window. He stared at the scared faces through the glass before slapping the bags against it. He dived over a desk, and then the explosives went off with a huge bang. The blast hit the room, crushing the scientists and smashing the lab equipment. The pain felt a bit less intense, but the damage was done. Grenville stood up and looked around. His whole team was dead. He set the timers on more charges and ran as fast as he could to the building's entrance. Along the way, he saw more of his team lying dead, caught by the kill signal. He was 10 feet from the door when the blast threw him out like a cannonball. The next day, the army sent in the main force of armored soldiers. They walked over the twisted bodies of ground troops killed by their own chips. They found Grenville tangled in a fence, but still alive. Surgeons took out the melted chip in his brain. The area was too damaged to put in another chip. His pain center was badly hurt. His speech was also limited to 3-word sentences with a blink. His records showed he was already considered low in intelligence, so they marked him as not recoverable and sent him back to Earth for simple jobs. Grenville's days as a soldier were over. Part 2, the caseworker, who handled Grenville when he got back to Earth, looked at the big man sitting quietly in the chair. Scars from many battles were clear on his face, neck, arms, and hands. His hair was cut very short, as Army rules required. A small bandage partly covered a terrible head wound. Thin white scars crossed his face, and a bigger purple one ran from his right temple to his jaw. His once handsome face now showed signs of much violence. The peaceful look in his blue eyes and his gentle smile softened the scars. His strong neck and shoulders bulged from his tight shirt, and his big hands rested on his powerful legs. Everything about him looked strong, except for his calm and friendly expression. The worker, curious, checked Grenville's war record. He was amazed by how long Grenville served and what he had done. As someone who liked history, he knew Grenville would have once been welcomed home as a hero. He saw that Grenville was assigned to handle fuel cells, a dangerous task at the power plants. This seemed very unfair to him. He decided to find another job for Grenville. Looking through the job openings, he found a position in the main garden of Capital City. He changed the codes in Grenville's file and marked the garden job as filled. For once, he felt good about his work. He smiled at Grenville, who smiled back. Grenville got his work bracelet, the largest size they had, put on his right wrist and was sent to Capitol Gardens. Head groundskeeper Scott cared deeply for every plant. He knew how to make each plant thrive and what could harm them. When Grenville arrived, Scott looked at the big man with some doubt. He could use the help for heavy tasks but did not want someone who might cause damage. This big, scarred man had clearly seen a lot of it. Scott asked Grenville to join him in the greenhouse and showed him an orchid he was trying to save. He asked Grenville what he saw. Grenville looked closely, turning the pot gently. He then said the leaves had pests. Scott nodded and spent the next 2 hours teaching Grenville how to treat orchids. Grenville remembered everything from just one lesson and showed a gentle touch with the flowers. Scott was hopeful and immediately made Grenville an apprentice groundskeeper. Grenville loved working in Capitol Gardens. It suited him much better than being a soldier. Now, the only things he had to get rid of were pests that harmed plants. He enjoyed learning about the garden from the old man. After a year, he knew as much about plants as Scott. He was allowed to check on all the plants and report on them. These reports took time because Grenville spoke slowly and briefly. Long talks were hard for him, so he kept it short. Scott was patient, and they got along well. Grenville slept in a small room in the greenhouse basement. It was a bit damp, but it smelled fresh, so Grenville didn't mind. Each night he had a big locker room and a shower to clean up. His clothes went into a machine that recycled them, and he got new synthetic pants and a shirt every morning. His boots were the only things he kept for a long time, getting a new pair every 6 months. Grenville was always ready and waiting in the greenhouse when the head groundskeeper arrived each morning. They had breakfast together in the garden's food area, where Grenville ate all his meals, and they talked about the day's tasks. The groundskeeper also gave Grenville homework. There was a public computer in the food area that he could use after work. Grenville studied Earth's plants and shared what he learned with his boss every morning. The old man was happy to see that Grenville loved learning and remembered everything he read. After mastering Earth's plants, Grenville started studying the plants he'd seen on other planets during his 13 years in the Army. Though he could not bring these plants to Earth, he found them interesting. Sometimes Grenville noticed things that surprised his boss. He saw some contamination in a flower bed at the garden's edge and guessed that a shop on the other side of the wall might be the cause. He wanted to study it but couldn't leave the grounds, so he didn't know what was on the other side. In reality, it was the Cheruthian embassy. The Cheruthians were cat-like aliens, small and gentle, with tan fur and colorful robes. They wore pretty earrings and were trying hard to trade with Earth, the newest member of the interplanetary gate network. The Cheruthians were under the control of a rival race, the Alsa Komani, who were big, dressed in black hooded robes, and were very sneaky. The Alsa Komani spread bad rumors about the Cheruthians and tried to block their trades. They wanted to keep the Cheruthians stuck on their home planet. Earth, being new and not wanting to get involved in interplanetary fights, strictly followed the Gate Network's rules. Disputes had to stay in the council rooms. Any alien pushing their political views on Earth risked being banned. Alien visitors also had to follow rules like not bringing alien plants to Earth. It was suspected that the Cheruthians had smuggled something in. The old man asked Grenville to collect some samples of the contaminated plants in sealed containers as proof. Later that week, an officer from Earth's Security Council came to talk to the head groundskeeper. He said a plant was found on the roof of the Cheruthian embassy during a surprise check. The Cheruthians denied bringing the plant, but admitted having its extract for medicine. The plant was used to make a medicine for a disease suddenly affecting their delegates and homeland. The security officer opened one container, and the aliens got very excited when they smelled the new hybrid flower. They wanted samples to test as a cure. But this behavior made the Security Council think they were guilty, so the Cheruthians were ordered to leave Earth, and the plants were destroyed following quarantine rules. The officer said all remaining samples of the hybrid had to be destroyed. Grenville took him to the far corner of the garden, but the flower bed was already dug up. The officer thought the Cheruthians took the plants, but Grenville pointed out that the marks in the dirt didn't look like theirs. The officer ignored this and reported the theft. Grenville said there were no more samples left. Grenville had met many Cheruthians while serving as a soldier. They often worked as doctors and surgeons. He always found them kind and reliable and hoped they could come back to Earth. There were many cold and unfriendly aliens, especially the Alsa Kamani in Grenville's experience. Earth needed good friends like the Cheruthians. After this, life went back to normal, and the garden thrived under the care of the old man and his apprentice. Grenville found some building materials, and he and his boss made new displays to showcase their beautiful plants. More people visited the gardens than they had in a long time. Grenville did his best to stay out of sight. The old man knew Grenville didn't like being in the spotlight, so he tried to protect him from curious eyes. Whenever someone cornered Grenville for an interview, it didn't take long for them to think he was too simple-minded. They couldn't believe he was the one making the gardens look so good. The old man's reputation grew instead. Grenville didn't mind. He thought the old man deserved the praise. One very hot day in late August, Grenville worked alone in the greenhouse. A bad disease was attacking their best orchids. He was carefully treating the leaves. The old man let him work without a shirt because the public wasn't allowed in the greenhouse. Grenville was so focused that he didn't hear the door open. He only noticed the visitor when she was almost next to him. He froze and slowly looked over his shoulder. An older woman, probably in her early 60s, stood behind him. She looked at all the scars on his wide back. Her face showed she felt sad for him. "You poor man," she whispered. "They don't hurt," Grenville replied. "But they did, didn't they?" she asked. Grenville didn't know what to say. He just nodded and turned to face her. When she saw the scars on his chest and stomach, she gasped and leaned on the workbench to steady herself. "Oh my God," she breathed. She reached out without thinking and touched the scars on his chest, ignoring his sweat. "How did you survive all these?" she whispered in awe. "I don't know. I'm lucky I—" "Guess," he said, struggling with the words. He looked over her head, hoping the old man would return from his meeting to save him. The woman noticed his odd way of speaking and looked up to see his nervous face. Realizing what she had been doing, she introduced herself instead of apologizing. "I'm Director Kayleen Daniels. One of my jobs as city councilor is to oversee all of Capital City's municipal gardens. "I've heard you've been working with head groundskeeper Scott for almost 2 years," she said, trying to regain her composure. Grenville nodded, still glancing nervously at the door. "My colleagues on the council are very impressed with the work you and Scott have done. You've made our city look better. We were thinking you two could also take care of the other 6 gardens." Grenville looked at her with surprise. "There are 7 gardens?" "Yes. Oh, of course, you've never left this one since you started, have you?" she realized. She had little contact with the workers. He shook his head. Just then, the old man entered and saw Grenville's relieved look. He picked up Grenville's shirt and handed it to him. Grenville quickly put it on. "Madam Director Daniels, to what do we owe the honor of your visit?" the old man asked. "Good day, Mr. Scott. I was just telling Grenville that the council wants you both to take care of the other 6 municipal gardens. If we improve them to the same level as this one, we'll get a special categorization in the Interplanetary Travel Guide. That will increase tourism and boost the city's revenue." "What about the other groundskeepers? They might not like us taking over," the old man said. "They can work for you or not," the woman stated flatly. "We can't let their egos hold us back." The old man knew higher-ups were behind this, but he kept quiet. He had good relationships with most of the other groundskeepers, so he hoped they could work something out. "Some of the smaller gardens don't have big budgets. Will there be extra money for them?" he asked. "You've made miracles with the city's largest garden, and you haven't had a budget increase in 5 years," the director noted. "Yes, we got creative, but mostly because of Grenville," he said, pointing to him. "I told him what I wanted, and he used scraps to build the displays. I don't know what materials the other gardens have." The woman looked at Grenville again, and he felt uncomfortable under her gaze. "See what miracles you can work with the others before we talk budget," she finally said. The old man knew he had no real choice, so he just nodded. With one last look at Grenville, Kayleen left the greenhouse. The old man sighed and sat down on a stool. "I should have known better than to get creative with the garden. I'm sorry, son, we're stuck now." "What do we do?" "I'll make some calls and let the others know what's going on." "I think we should meet each groundskeeper," he said. "We'll check what plants, people, and supplies they have. Then we can make a big list of everything and share it. Each garden needs to be special, but also follow a main idea if the director wants a special theme. I'll get a travel permit for you to go between the gardens. You will have to do most of the work. You can ask other workers to help." He patted Grenville on the arm and went back to his office to make some calls. In the end, the old man convinced the groundskeepers that this plan would help them more than it would hurt. They trusted him because he wasn't looking for praise and would respect their gardens. After seeing what they had, the old man and Grenville made a big plan. Grenville started moving supplies between the 7 gardens and making new, beautiful displays. It was hard work. Each night, after taking care of his own orchids, Grenville would go back to his basement room, take a hot shower, and fall asleep as soon as he hit the bed. It took 7 months, but in the spring, they finished. Groundskeeper Scott and apprentice McCree stood proudly at the Capitol Gardens while city leaders and politicians praised their own vision for the city. The press and public loved it, and many visited the gardens all summer. Even in winter, the gardens were busy because the climate was mild. The indoor displays were a big hit, bringing in lots of money. For the first time in years, the groundskeepers got year-end bonuses. Happy times indeed. Grenville kept moving between gardens, fixing displays, arranging plants, and repairing water features. Eventually, he trained the workers to take over these tasks. He wanted to get back to his personal orchids in Capitol Gardens, something he didn't have much time for anymore. Capital City earned a special title for its 7 gardens, and the next year, tourists from many places came in record numbers. The city's economy thrived. Director Kayleen Daniels was elected mayor in the next election. She visited Grenville in the greenhouse and asked if there was anything he wanted as a reward for his work. She knew how important he was, but was ready to dismiss any big requests. However, Grenville just smiled, shook his head, and got back to work. She watched him for a bit, then left, feeling confused and moved by the scarred man's calmness and gentle care for the flowers. Vivian Drummond, the former mayor's wife, was angry that her husband had lost to Kayleen. She started following the new mayor, hoping to find something scandalous. She watched Kayleen walk alone into the greenhouse and come out looking puzzled and troubled. After the mayor left, Vivian sneaked into the greenhouse. She saw someone working alone. It must have been him Kayleen spoke to. She hid in the shadows and watched. The room was hot, and soon the man took off his shirt. She saw that he had many scars on his back and arms. Gathering courage, she walked towards him. As she got closer, she saw that these were not decorative scars, but signs of long and painful injuries. His hair was long and light blonde. She started to feel nervous. He noticed her footsteps and turned, expecting the mayor but seeing a stranger. Vivian's face turned white when she saw his scars. Even his face was marked. His blue eyes looked nervous. He glanced at his shirt behind her, unable to grab it without possibly touching her. Vivian saw his worker bracelet and got confused. Why would Kayleen speak to someone like him? "Hello," she said. "Hello," he replied with a soft and deep voice. "My name is Vivian. What's yours?" she asked. "Grenville," he answered. "Did my friend Kayleen come to speak with you?" She tried to probe. Grenville sensed her false tone and became worried. He thought it wasn't smart to share information with this woman, so he just shrugged. The way he moved showed his scars in strange ways, which caught Vivian's attention. She couldn't look away. She had never seen anything like this in her safe, fancy life. It shook her more than she wanted to admit. "What do you do here, Grenville?" she asked quietly. "I take care of the plants," he replied. "Vivian, what are you doing here?" Kayleen's voice rang out. Vivian jumped and turned to see the mayor standing nearby. She felt guilty, so she quickly made up a reason. "I've been looking for tips on redesigning our gardens at home. I know I'm not supposed to be here, but this is where they keep the gardening experts," she said smoothly. Kayleen couldn't accept that Grenville didn't want anything from her. She thought he was just waiting. She was here to get his answer today. Seeing Vivian here made her suspicious. If the ex-mayor's garden suddenly became amazing, people might think it was all part of his plan. She couldn't let that happen. "Yes, but this expert is already busy. He'll be working on my estate's grounds," Kayleen said, a plan forming in her mind. She watched Vivian's face fall. "Now, if you don't mind, I need to speak with my chief designer alone," she added, pointing to the far door. Vivian, angry but silent, nodded and left the building. When Kayleen and Grenville were alone, she looked at his chest, tracing the scars with her eyes. The scars were strangely beautiful. She saw nervousness in his eyes. Kayleen knew she had the power to make his life hard, but she felt protective of him. He had suffered a lot, but still seemed innocent. She wanted to keep him safe, maybe just to use his skills for herself. She thought about moving him to her estate. His life would be better there. She needed to get his work pass transferred from the city garden to her estate, but she had the authority to do it. She smiled kindly at him. "Don't worry. I'll take good care of you," she said, and left. The next day, Grenville stood in a large, dusty room. This would be his new home. The big greenhouse at the Daniels estate needed a lot of work. The small cottage next to it would be where he lived now. It wasn't big, but it was roomier than his old place at Capitol Gardens. There was even a big shed with tools at the back. Grenville was now the head groundskeeper. No one had had this job for 3 generations. An outside company had done basic upkeep, but now the mayor's estate needed to look just as beautiful as the other famous gardens in the city. He started cleaning the small cottage, getting supplies from the maids in the main building. The workers there were friendly once they saw how gentle he was, despite his size and scars. He looked forward to working with them, even though their tasks were different. The kitchen staff made his meals for him, and they didn't seem to mind his appearance. It took him a day to clean the cottage and find what needed fixing. There was enough wood in the shed for repairs, which he finished in the next day or two. Then he moved on to the greenhouse, which took several more days to fix. He cleared out old plants, refreshed the soil, fixed the watering system, replaced broken glass, and made everything spotless. A week later, the greenhouse was fully operational. Next, Grenville inspected the grounds and noted all the plants. Some plants were in the wrong places, which he planned to fix. A month after he moved in, Kayleen visited him in his cottage at the end of the day. She was impressed with how clean everything looked, but noticed there were no personal items. She made a mental note to get him a new data terminal. "So, do you have some plans for me to see?" she asked. Grenville nodded and spread out some drawings on a small table. He had sketched the garden plans over a map of the property. She saw how beautiful the estate would look with some fancy trees along the long, curvy driveway. The garden itself looked like it would be amazing. She had seen the cost for all the materials needed and was a bit worried. Now, seeing the plans, she thought the cost might actually be too low. Trusting his skills to design within a budget, she approved the estimate and design. He would start the next day. His worker's bracelet let him travel from the estate to all the city gardens. He visited each one and picked up some extra plants from the greenhouses to use in the estate's garden. Grenville made sure each garden was doing well and answered any worker's questions. There was nothing he needed to fix, so he made one last stop at Capitol Gardens. There he visited an old man, briefly, who was happy to see him and not surprised or upset that Grenville was moving on to better things. Before leaving, Grenville quietly took his personal orchid project and went back to the estate to start working. His new data console arrived, and he used it to order the supplies he needed for the project. He had limited access to an estate account with just enough money for his project. The console was a newer model, and Grenville looked forward to studying more about plants on it when he had the time. Working from sunrise to sunset, 7 days a week, Grenville had the estate ready to show off 2 months later. The mayor became the talk of the town again. The estate grounds were stunning, cleverly featuring key parts from each of the 7 gardens of Capital City. Kayleen was very pleased with Grenville and bought out his contract from the city to keep him working at the estate. During this time, Kayleen's daughter, Annazelle, returned home from university as she'd been expelled again. She was very smart, but had serious issues from years of being neglected by her mom. Annazelle hated her mom and had been acting out for years to embarrass and punish her for the neglect. Now, in her mid-20s, she was tall and very thin, which made her fake boobs look larger in the tight clothes she wore. Her long black hair had white streaks, and she wore dark makeup that made her pale skin look even whiter, giving her an eerie appearance. She had many piercings and tattoos all over her body, showing scenes that were very inappropriate. While her mother gave tours of the garden to the press, Annazelle was locked in her room. When they left, Annazelle didn't talk to anyone. She liked being alone anyway. The women in the kitchen started taking turns bringing Grenville his meals, and each tried to get his attention. He was very shy, and none of them understood that he had never been with a woman before and didn't know how to handle their advances. Margarita was the boldest of the group and decided that this morning she was going to see Grenville without his clothes. She picked up the basket and, with the teasing of the others in her ears, she headed off to the cottage a little earlier than usual. Arriving early was a smart move, as Grenville was usually fresh and clean from his shower by the time they normally brought his meals. She quietly slipped into the cottage and heard the shower running. She put the basket on the counter, loosened her hair, and took off her dress and shoes. She tiptoed to the bathroom door and peeked inside. His back was to her, so she stepped inside but froze when she saw the scars all over his back. They ran from his shoulders all the way down to his legs, dozens of them, from small white lines to deep twisted scars. His body looked huge in the small shower. When he turned to rinse the soap from his back, she gasped. His chest was even more scarred. Grenville stopped in his tracks when he heard the gasp. Blinking soap from his eyes, he saw Margarita standing naked in his bathroom. He blushed deeply but couldn't look away from her smooth skin and graceful curves. Margarita's eyes traveled down to his waist, and she gasped again. He was very well endowed. He seemed unsure and embarrassed. It finally clicked for her. He was a virgin. How someone of his age could be a virgin was unknown, but maybe the scars had something to do with it. She wasn't put off by his scars. They were just part of who he was, and now she was even more curious about his past. But first, she wanted to touch what was standing up to greet her. Grenville stayed still, but Margarita stepped forward bravely and took hold of him. He gasped at the sensation, and she was amazed by the warmth in her hands. She could just wrap her fingers around it, and both hands together couldn't fully cover it. "Grenville, have you ever done this before?" she asked with a playful smile. "No, it feels so good," he moaned. "You won't last long the first time, so I'll help you," she said, keeping her eyes on what she held. He didn't understand. The first time, she began moving her hand up and down, making the sensitive part more exposed. Margarita felt his heartbeat through the warm skin, and his breathing got faster. She rubbed her palm over the top, making his whole body tense up. "Oh," he gasped as intense pleasure washed over him. Grenville leaned against the wall, feeling his muscles shake. That was amazing. He felt so thankful to Margarita. He opened his eyes and saw her smiling. "Now I'll teach you how to kiss," she said. She used one hand to pull his head down and pressed her lips to his. He responded right away, and she felt him get hard again. Margarita shivered at his touch and breathed faster as his hands went lower. "Now! Grenville, now!" she gasped. His strong hands lifted her up until he was almost out. Then he thrust her back down. She screamed as pleasure overtook her. The four women in the kitchen were tense with excitement. When Margarita didn't come back right away, they knew the boldest one among them had acted. The two youngest, Sasha and Neela, felt a bit jealous as they had wanted to be the first with the big man. The next oldest, Hannah, grinned, imagining the fun Margarita must be having. The oldest, Gwendolyn, struggled with her feelings as she liked Grenville and his gentle nature. When Margarita burst through the door, all four women squealed in surprise. She quickly sat down by the kitchen table and put her face in her hands. She seemed to be crying. Sasha and Neela, frightened, rushed to Gwendolyn's side. Hannah was the first to speak. "Margarita? Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" she asked, softly. The seated woman looked up at Hannah, seeming to want to laugh and cry at the same time. "Hurt me? No. He's very gentle. Did you know he was a virgin?" She looked at Gwendolyn. "Did you?" Gwendolyn's voice, though deeper, broke a bit as she answered. "I suspected." The two youngest came forward eagerly, asking what he was like. Margarita looked at them, torn between laughing and crying. "He's terribly scarred. Whatever he's been through must have been awful." She shook her head, trying to shake off the thoughts before looking at them again. "But he's beautiful too, strong and gentle, forceful yet tender. I thought it would be just a bit of fun. A quick romp and a laugh, but I wasn't ready for that. I'm so confused." She bit her lip and fidgeted in her chair. "He also has a really big one. I'm a little sore down there." Sasha and Neela giggled, imagining the large man with them. "No," Gwendolyn barked, knowing their thoughts. "Tomorrow I will bring him breakfast." Her boldness stunned the others into silence. Margarita looked like she wanted to argue, but she already had a boyfriend and now felt very mixed up about her feelings. She knew she had no reason to complain. In the hallway outside the kitchen, Annabelle listened with growing interest. Being stuck at the estate by her mother didn't seem so bad. Maybe there would be some fun distractions. Grenville finished breakfast and thought about Margarita's visit that morning. He had never felt so good. He had never touched a woman before and was amazed by how soft her skin was. Kissing had quickly become his second favorite thing to do. He wondered why she left so soon. Was that what women did? He hoped she would come back and wanted to know more. He moved into the greenhouse to check his secret project. His orchids were special. He had learned a lot from the old gardener, but now he knew even more. His research taught him the science of plants. Secretly, he kept an alien hybrid flower he had found in Capitol Gardens. He thought it was unique. The main plant was dying, so he crossed it with a type of orchid. The result was a plant that couldn't be hurt by earth pests and diseases. Its petals changed colors in the light, looking like fire. It reminded him of a flower from a planet he had once visited. The scent was sweet and calming. Working with these orchids always made him feel happier. Grenville hid the 10 plants behind a curtain. The original plant was supposed to be destroyed, but its genes lived on in his cella orchids. He was sure he would get in trouble if someone found out. At the very least, his work would be destroyed. He put on his boots and started working in the garden. Annabelle sat by her window and watched the groundskeeper. She noticed his big, rough hands moving carefully among the plants. She wondered what his hands would feel like. She had heard he was simple-minded, but his gardening skills made her think he might be a genius. She laughed at the thought. A gardening genius. Silly. She decided to talk to him and see how smart he really was. If he wasn't as dumb as she thought, maybe she would spend more time with him. She slipped downstairs and into the garden without anyone seeing her. The big man was working on the water feature. His shirt was wet, and he rolled up his sleeves. Annabelle saw the marks on his skin and froze. Once, she had run away from her private school. She went to an underground club to get high and hide. She got some scars on her arm from a ritual. It was painful, but it made her feel strong. Now she compared her scars to his. His marks looked raw and powerful, making her feel small and weak. She got angry. How could a gardener make her feel so insignificant? She grabbed a tool from the cart and struck him on the back with all her strength. As the blade cut him, he turned and knocked the tool from her hand. His combat training kicked in automatically. His hand shot forward to crush her windpipe but stopped just before hitting her. Annabelle's eyes went wide and she lost control of her bladder for a moment. She saw her death in his eyes and felt humiliated. She ran back to the house, sobbing. Grenville's eyes were wild with fear. His body shook with adrenaline. He fell to his knees, then to his hands as the rush passed. He could hear people running towards him, and before he passed out, saw some workers coming to help him. Later, he woke up on his stomach in his cottage. The room was quiet, but he heard someone close by. He turned his head and saw Gwendolyn sitting near his bed. "You're awake. You gave us quite a scare," she said. "What happened?" he mumbled. "The young lady of the estate hit you on the back with a gardening tool. You have another scar now," she said, checking the stitches. The doctor Madame Daniels brought was skilled and discreet. "You shouldn't move much for a few days. Let the wound heal." "Why?" he asked. "So it gets better, silly," she teased. "No, why did she do it?" he asked in a low voice. "Oh, sorry, we don't really know. The poor girl isn't right in the head. Her mom never wanted kids and ignores her, so she acts out. But hurting others is new for her. Usually, she just hurts herself." She looked sad, thinking about the troubled young woman. "Could I talk to her?" he asked. "I'll tell Madame Daniels you want to," Gwendolyn said, feeling uneasy. She quickly pointed to a tray of food. "I brought you some dinner. You slept through lunch." Grenville sat up, even though Gwendolyn tried to stop him. He sat on the bed's edge and placed the tray on his lap. There were sandwiches, cheese, and fruit. She sat down and watched him eat. She also noticed his chest muscles and how his scars moved as he did. He finished eating and drank some water, feeling satisfied. "Thank you," he said to Gwendolyn, who blushed. "Can I ask you a question?" "Yes. Do you know what Margarita did with me this morning?" he asked. He had heard them gossip about their love lives before and assumed she knew. Gwendolyn blushed more. "Yes, she told me." "Why did she do that? Does she love me?" he asked, clearly confused. Gwendolyn looked pained. "Do you love her?" "No. Later I remembered she has a boyfriend," he said, looking guilty. "Don't feel guilty. Margarita just wanted fun. They need to sort out their lives. But that's not for us to judge," she said. Grenville yawned and looked sleepy. Gwendolyn smiled and took the tray. She helped him lie back down and checked his stitches. She saw they were healing well. She looked at his face and saw he was already asleep. Gwendolyn watched him sleep and realized she felt more protective than attracted to him. His innocence made her want to protect him. She sighed. She would keep her breakfast plans, but now she wanted to protect him from the other women. 2 days later, Grenville was sitting under a tree by the cottage. The sun was hot, but the shade was cool. He heard an electric cart coming. He saw it was Kayleen driving Annabelle to the cottage. He stood and brushed himself off. The cart stopped, and Kayleen looked at him. "I heard you want to talk with my daughter," she said. Grenville nodded. "She's yours." She turned to Annabelle. "Get out." Annabelle looked shocked but got out of the cart. As soon as she was out, her mother drove away. The young woman looked at Grenville and trembled. "You can't touch me. You're just a worker," she said nervously. "I wouldn't," he said. "What do you want?" she asked. "I wanted to apologize," he said quietly. "What?" Annabelle said, confused. "I almost hit you, my combat training. I'm sorry," he said, bowing his head. "Combat training? I thought you were a gardener," Annabelle said. "Before I was a gardener, I was a soldier for 13 years, he explained. "Is that how you got those scars?" she asked. "Yes, except for the new one," he said with a gentle smile. She scowled but stopped when she saw his smile. "You're weird." "I was wondering why you hit me?" he asked. Her face turned red like she might explode. "It's okay if you can't tell me," he said, raising his hands to calm her. She fought her anger and finally controlled it. "You made me mad when I saw your scars. I had some scars done to me, and now I see how silly that was. None of my scars were on purpose. Asking for scars, it must take a lot of courage," Grenville said softly. Annazelle looked for mockery but saw his open, honest face. She saw admiration and acceptance. She began to cry and fell to her knees. Grenville quickly knelt in front of her. When she sobbed, he held her, and she pressed her face against his shirt. Grenville remembered comforting younger kids during his training. He found it calming to offer a shoulder to cry on, to be protective and gentle. Annazelle was hurting, and he could offer that. She cried for a long time. When she stopped, she felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from her heart. She found herself curled up on Grenville's lap. She felt a peace she had never known before. He said nothing and held her gently in his strong arms. She looked down at his chest and saw she had soaked his shirt with tears. She felt a bit embarrassed, but he didn't seem to mind. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome," he whispered back. He helped her to her feet. They moved to the picnic table under the tree. They sat in silence, listening to the wind in the leaves above. The warmth of the day wrapped around them. "How did you become a soldier?" she asked. "The orphanage chose that for me," he replied. "You must not have been very good at it considering how scarred you are," she said quickly. She wished she could take the words back, fearing she might have hurt him. To her surprise, he grinned. "Yes, I got hurt a lot. But I'm alive, which is the best I could hope for." He shrugged. He looked around. "I'm very lucky. I read your file. It said you were mentally slow, emotionally damaged. But you don't seem that way to me," Annazelle said quietly, looking at his scars. "Sometimes it helps me, sometimes it doesn't," he frowned. He thought of the Churuthians who were banned from the planet because the security agent wouldn't listen to him. "What happened that makes you talk like that?" she asked, her curiosity growing. "My last mission," he started. A wave of grief for his team rolled over him, making it hard to breathe. He still struggled with his bad memories. He closed his eyes and did his breathing exercises. When he was calm again, he saw her worried expression. "Sorry, my friends all died in that one. I was left hurt up here." Grenville touched the side of his head. "Our discipline chips were hacked and overloaded. Killed everyone but me." "That's awful," she gasped. "I prefer being a gardener," he said quietly. The distant sound of gravel crunching made him look toward the driveway leading to the main building. His cottage was away from the mansion, but he could see who came and went. He saw a military truck with 2 black limousines, each with small flags, heading to the front door. Soldiers exited the truck and stood guard around the cars. A military officer got out of the first limousine and walked to the front door where the butler met him. They went inside. Annazelle saw where he was looking and glanced, too. "Ah! Another reason the witch wanted me out of the house. You don't like your mother very much," he said, turning back to her. She snorted. "That woman is evil. She has no kindness or decency. She doesn't deserve the name mother." "Then she doesn't deserve your time," Grenville said gently. Annazelle stared at him, thinking about his words. The officer returned to his car, and Grenville saw Madame Daniels come down the steps and walk to a small electric cart by the mansion. She got in and drove towards the cottage. The cars followed her. Grenville stood and walked closer to the lane. He waited in place. Annazelle came over to stand by him. She could tell he was nervous. Kayleen stopped in front of him and gave him a hard look before turning to her daughter. It was too late to send her away. The truck pulled up, passed the cart, and stopped. Soldiers got out and stood guard. They eyed Grenville with caution but did not move towards him. The officer got out and walked to Kayleen. "Is this the man who worked as a groundskeeper in Capitol Gardens?" he asked. "Yes. I bought his contract outright, but he had worked there for more than 2 years," she said stiffly. Grenville's nervousness increased. The officer approached him. I'm Major Skelly of the Judge Advocate General's office in Central City. You are Grenville McCree, the groundskeeper? One of the doors on the second limousine opened, and the officer looked back quickly. Before anyone could move, a small figure stepped out and turned to face Grenville. He gasped sharply. "A Cheruthian! Diplomat Chen, please get back into the vehicle," the major barked. "Please, let me speak with him," the Cheruthian pleaded. "Chanura La! Nila Samida! Chen!" Grenville said to the diplomat. The officer's head snapped towards Grenville. The Cheruthian's eyes lit up, and it bowed deeply to the big man, who bowed deeply in return. "What did you say?" Skelly barked. "A traditional Cheruthian greeting of respect and goodwill," Grenville replied quietly. Kayleen was glaring at Grenville, and his mouth went dry. "And how do you know that language?" the major growled. "I spent a lot of time healing in multiple Cheruthian field hospitals," he replied humbly. "I will check that story soon, but we are here today to ask about your role in the events regarding the banned plants found in the Cheruthian embassy and the Cheruthian theft of contaminated plants from Capitol Gardens, which led to their expulsion from Earth." "The Cheruthians didn't steal the bad flowers from Capitol Gardens," Grenville said firmly. "The security officer's report said it was clearly the Cheruthians," Skelly argued. "They don't wear—" Grenville glanced down at his shoes. "What?" The major's voice got louder with each word. "The tracks in the dirt of the flower bed were made by big boots. Heavy thieves wore them. Cheruthians are light and don't wear shoes. It's not their way," Grenville said. This was the longest he'd talked in a while, and it made his head hurt. The Cheruthian still stared at him, eyes bright. The tips of its tall ears wiggled with excitement, making the tiny earrings chime musically. "Why didn't you tell the security agent this earlier?" Skelly growled. "I tried, but—" "He wouldn't listen," Grenville admitted. "The flowers, were they really all destroyed?" the diplomat blurted out. Grenville knew if he admitted he hadn't destroyed all the illegal plants, he could lose everything. He might even go to jail. "Diplomat Chen, this is the last time I'm telling you to get back in the car and stop interfering. Any more contact with my witness and I'll end the investigation." "Please, no! My people will die without the cure!" the diplomat cried. Grenville glanced at Kayleen. She was not happy about being dragged into this mess. She saw no good coming from this and was clearly mad at him. It showed on her face. Anazel seemed fascinated by the Cheruthian diplomat. They were a beautiful race, so he wasn't surprised. But when she turned back to him, he was surprised to see how much she cared for the alien. He looked into Chen's pleading eyes and remembered how many times Cheruthian surgeons had saved him. His current life was possible because of Chen's people. He sighed. "No, I saved one," he said quietly. "One?" The diplomat leaned against the car, unsure if he felt relief or sorrow. Major Skelly walked up to Grenville. "You ignored a direct order from an Earth Security Council officer. Do you know what that means?" Grenville looked at his feet. "The Security Council? Officer was wrong. About the Cheruthians. He was wrong. About the plants, too. I saved just one." "Where is it?" the officer asked, his tone serious. "It was dying." The diplomat made a small groan when he heard this. "But I studied it and figured out the original species. To save its genes, I mixed it with an orchid." He looked at the Cheruthian and bowed his head. "Can I show you?" Grenville glanced at the major, who nodded. Grenville walked to the long greenhouse door. The Cheruthian followed close behind, along with the major, a scowling Kayleen, Anazel, and 2 soldiers. He led them to the far end of the big room and pulled back a curtain. The sun poured in through the glass, shining off the petals of his cella orchids. He had 25 of them now, glowing with bright reds and yellows. Grenville turned back and saw everyone stunned. Even Kayleen had lost her angry look. She walked forward with the Cheruthian, and the two gazed at the vibrant flowers. The diplomat took a careful sniff and staggered back. Grenville caught him easily. The small alien looked dazed and made a sound to expel the scent from his sensitive nose. "It's pure!" he exclaimed, looking up at Grenville. The big man nodded. "The original species comes from an Alsa Kamane quarantined world. They are the only ones who had access to the plants." He looked at the major. "How could you possibly know that?" Skelly asked, skeptical. My troop was part of the force requested by the Alsakomani to pacify the native uprising. The result was genocide, Grenville said in a soft voice. I remember the fields of fireflowers, like these, but not as bright. We were told to kill everyone. The Alsakomani controlled that world and started a quarantine after we left. Grenville sat heavily on a stool, holding his head. He found it ironic that the only pain he felt sharply now came from a body part with no pain sensors. What's wrong? Anazel asked him. Talking hurts, was all he managed to say, wincing. One of those soldiers could have brought the plants from the planet. It wasn't necessarily the Alsakomani, Skelly argued, ignoring Grenville's pain. Grenville looked at the major through pain-filled eyes. He struggled to continue. All troops went through intense cleaning, process, stripped down to skin and burned. Off the top layer, we carried nothing off. Alsakomani said the planet had dangerous spores that made natives go mad. But I fought natives. They weren't mad. They were desperate. Grenville slumped forward, cradling his head in his hands. Anazel saw Grenville's suffering and looked at her mother for help. Her mother did nothing. For once, Anazel thought about convincing her mother that getting involved was good for her. There wasn't time to plan. She had to improvise. Stepping next to her mother, but keeping her eyes on Grenville, she started whispering quickly. There is a great opportunity here. Capital City is famous for its gardens. You are famous for creating the gardens. These flowers, grown in a garden in the capital city, could save an entire race of people. Think of how good that would look in the headlines. The Major wants the plants destroyed, but sending them through the gate to another planet works just as well. Give them to the Cheruthians. Kayleen looked at her daughter in surprise. For the first time, it felt like they understood each other. She looked at the Major and the diplomat, thinking about the idea. Then she spoke up, using her authoritative voice. She spoke directly to the Major. I believe you have the information you need. My gardener has reached his limits. Pushing him further would be bad for his health. She turned to the Cheruthian, who was still amazed by the beauty of the flowers. Diplomat Chen, if these flowers can help find a cure for your people, please take them as a gift from our city. We wish you the best of luck. She turned back to the Major. They'll need to be packed in special containers for travel through the gates. You can handle that, right, Major Skelly? The Major thought about how good this would look on his record. Then he remembered Grenville. There is still the matter of him disobeying the original order to destroy the plants. This is when Anazel made her move. Then send him to Cheruthia with the flowers. He can make sure they get there safely. If your investigation finds he did something wrong, banishing him off-planet is a good punishment and solves any further problems. She looked at the diplomat. If that's okay with you, of course. Diplomat Chen wasn't sure what was going on between these humans, but he had been around them long enough to understand their emotions. He saw the big man with the kind manners was in great pain and barely aware of what was happening. Mayor Daniels tried to look kind while hiding her anger at the young woman with the strange tattoos. That young woman was trying hard not to smile. The Major looked like he'd been given a gift, standing up straighter with a small smile on his face. Chen would be happy for help from the expert who made these wonderful flowers. If they worked like he thought, the man would be a hero. Yes, that would be very agreeable. The Major acted quickly to make sure nothing messed up this plan, which tied up all the issues and followed his boss's secret order to fix this problem fast. Then it's settled. I'll have special travel containers brought over right away. A hazmat team will pack the flowers and they will follow the vehicles to the gates. We will send everything through to Cheruthia today. Grenville McCree, these soldiers will go with you to your room to grab any personal items. You may take one small bag. I have nothing to take, Grenville said weakly. Then Sergeant Espinoza, Corporal Davis, please take Mr. McCree to the truck and stay with him, Skelly said. Yes, sir. The two men helped Grenville outside. Kayleen opened and closed her mouth, trying hard to think of a way to keep her important worker. If your investigation shows my gardener is not at fault, will he be brought back? She asked. Major Skelly thought about how much trouble Grenville could cause if he testified against Alsakomani. He knew his office would make sure the banishment was permanent and let the Cheruthian government deal with it. But he didn't say any of this to Mayor Daniels. Of course. Annabelle watched Grenville being led from the greenhouse. She suddenly realized what she had done. She had caused this sweet man to be banished from Earth. Guilt hit her hard, followed by a deep feeling of loneliness. She had only known Grenville for a few days and had only talked to him for a few minutes today, but she felt truly grateful for his simple kindness, and this was how she repaid him. She also realized how much she wanted to know him better. That wasn't going to happen now. While her mother was clearly furious with her, Annabelle realized she didn't care. Grenville was right. Her mom wasn't worth her time. But maybe he was. Epilogue: Grenville sat cross-legged under the red leaves of a tree outside his small cottage. The building blended almost perfectly into the hillside. Cheruthian architecture, built for a large human size. The people of the planet wanted to show their gratitude, so they gave Grenville a new home on 10 acres of land with the best climate for growing anything he wanted. The gardens he created rivaled anything he had helped make in Capital City, and he gave the Cheruthians free access to them. He made walking paths through the thick woods at the north end of the property. These paths led to open fields where families had picnics. The formal gardens were below the fields, and beyond them was a large pond with wetlands on the southern edge. Grenville ordered some boats for the pond so adventurous and romantic people could row around. That was a big hit. The pond was fed by 2 streams. One ran along the east side of the grounds. The other stream tumbled happily down the hilly west side of the property. Inside the western hill, near its top, was his cottage. Grenville sat down, taking in the view of the big, open land around him. It was a larger place than his old cottage at the Daniel estate. The house had all the latest equipment, but he used only the computer a lot. He kept learning about Cheruthia's plants and other places in the gate network. The cool breeze felt good in the summer. The shade from the tree made it even better. He did his breathing exercises and felt calm. Out in the field, families were playing. Some were at the pond. A weird feeling of loneliness hit him. He had lots of visitors and became close friends with diplomat Chen. He also made many friends in the science community while working together for a year on a cure for a disease. They found out the disease came from special flowers from a quarantined planet. The leaders in charge of the Gate Network were now looking into Cheruthia's claim of attempted genocide. Grenville's evidence was strong. Rumors said the Alsa Kamani had put a price on his head, which didn't help their case. Earth even stopped them from entering the planet while the investigation went on. Grenville felt safe as long as he stayed on Cheruthia. That lonely feeling came back. He tried to figure out why, but his thoughts were interrupted. A vehicle pulled up next to his house. There was a paved lane that connected to the city below, but he wasn't expecting anyone. Grenville walked to the lane and stopped in shock. Annabelle Daniels was there. Diplomat Chen came around the vehicle with a smile, but Grenville couldn't take his eyes off Annabelle. Her tattoos and piercings glittered in the sun. Her dress was tight and showed off her shape. She looked more beautiful than anyone he had seen in a year. "Hello, Grenville. Remember me?" she asked softly. The lonely feeling vanished. Human company was what he missed. A huge grin spread across his face. "Hello, Annabelle. Of course I remember you," he said. "Your speech problems, they're gone," she gasped. Grenville smiled a bit shyly. "Yes, the Cheruthians have amazing surgeons. I still get headaches if I talk too long, but it's not as bad as before. But tell me, how did you get here?" "I wanted to see you again, to say sorry for getting you sent away from Earth. I only thought about hurting my mother and not how it would hurt you. It was selfish, and I wanted to say, 'I'm sorry,'" she said quickly, her face turning red. "No need to apologize. Being sent here was the best thing for me. The Cheruthians are great friends and hosts. I never thought I'd see another human, much less someone I knew. This is wonderful." Annabelle's smile grew wider and her eyes twinkled. She had been worried about his reaction. "My good friend Grenville, with our new contact with Earth, I'm learning to read human faces. Each time I visited, I saw your longing for human company. When Miss Daniels contacted my office, I saw it was... Now, what was that word? Ah, yes, fate." Chen walked up and patted Grenville on the arm. "I hope you don't mind that I invited her to stay with you. You do have a guest room, right?" Grenville turned red at his friend's cheeky tone. Annabelle smiled at his embarrassment and giggled. Yes, of course. That's a wonderful idea, he stuttered out. Great. I have business back in the city, so I will leave you two alone. Grenville, can you take her luggage from the vehicle? He grabbed the big, heavy suitcase, and they waved as Chen drove away. They walked back to the front of his house. Annabelle gasped at the beautiful view. Oh, Grenville, it looks so beautiful, she exclaimed. Grenville smiled at her joy. This was what was missing from his life. How long can you stay? He asked, hopeful. How long would you like me to? She asked with a smile. The answer to her question turned out to be a lifetime, a long, happy, and exciting lifetime. But that's another story. Hey, audience! If you liked this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.